This is my wrap up for March, April, and May. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. Today I have a wrap up of all the books that I read in the past 3 months, which, I mean, this is a stack that most people read in a given month. I don't have the patience for that, nor I do have the concentration span for that, nor do I have the time to do that. But it's going well. According to Goodreads, I'm 3 books behind my, goal. But I have a summer vacation coming up. I have a trip coming up in June. There are several trips I hope that I'm still going to be taking in the fall time. So we're doing good. The reading game is back. And I also want to update you on the books that are still on my TBR that I'm still going to finish. I have now read 17 books this year so far, and I think so far I've only discussed 7 with you, and that means we are going to do an update on 10 different books that I've been reading, and there's a 5-star read in here for me. So yes, like I said, we're doing good. We're doing good. Where did my phone go? Oh, it's still over there. Okay, so my phone is in a different spot, and I don't feel like getting up and putting this stack of books somewhere else while I'm doing this video. So I'm gonna have to pop on the screen how many Goodreads stars I gave each one, but I still know which one was the 5-star read, and I still know a couple of these were also 4 stars for me. Not everything was as successful. I'm just gonna go through the stack as it's lying in my lap. There's no rhyme or reason to this. And if you saw my declutter that I posted last week, you will know that I decluttered this. This is by Hafsah Faizal. I hope that's how you pronounce the name. A Tempest of Tea. And I spotted this last year. I went to, I think this was Zwolle. I did a couple of day trips around the Netherlands last year because I was only going to Japan really. And then I just did little day trips here and there. And I ended up doing a weekend in London in November. But I wasn't really going to too many different places. So I was like, you know what? It's going to be fun to use my travel card because I have this rail card that I can use for unlimited travel on the weekends. So I was like, you know what? I can spend like a Sunday or a Saturday going to different cities and like explore the Netherlands a little bit more. So I had selected a couple of cities that I wanted to go to. So I went to Haarlem to visit one of my subscribers actually. I went to Maastricht. I went to Zwolle. I think I went to The Hague to go to a museum. I went to Amsterdam again. Hadn't been there in years. And so I just went to a couple of different places to visit a museum in the morning and then like do some book shopping in the afternoon. And Zwolle has this really lovely bookstore that's in this church, so it's really, really beautiful. It was a very rainy day that day, so I was feeling a little bit of tea, and this was lying on the table. I hadn't seen it anywhere, and I was just intrigued by the cover, and then it had the sprayed edges, and it was like, this sounds like something that I might like. So plot-wise, we are meeting a cast of characters in this book, and they are sort of like on the lower end of the society in this like dystopian sort of world. There is a ruler that hides behind a mask, and there are these there's a committee of people who select this person all the time, and they have all the power, but everybody else doesn't really have any. And in this world, there are vampires, and they are sort of like the minority group, you could say, in this society. So they are looked down upon, they need to hide their urges, etc., etc. And this essentially, at least the way it's sold by the blurb on the back, is that we meet a cast of characters who run a tea room by day, but at night it's this den for vampires to sort of live their lives and get the sustenance they need, if you catch my drift. So that's what I thought this was going to be, and that like the regime was like trying to knock them down or something. And that does happen in the first part of the book. But then the second half of the book, it becomes a heist, which is not advertised anywhere, and it wasn't executed very well. So we have the sort of the planning, the lead up to the heist, which takes up actually the majority of the book. It's a short book. It's only like 300 something pages, I believe. Yeah, not even 350. So it's a pretty short book. And then the thing you get from the blurb on the back, it's just a completely different book. And I didn't enjoy this as much as I had expected. mainly because of the ending. I don't want to spoil it for you, because if you have this lying about and you do want to read it yourself and you haven't yet, I don't want to like give away any clues. But I felt that the ending was really predictable and just not as surprising, you could say. There was like plot twist after plot twist after plot twist, because apparently this is a first book in a series, so they're trying to like tease you to read the next one. But I just felt like it was like dropping things just for the sake of trying to have an interesting plot. But the majority of the book was just boring. It was just people standing around and talking to each other. And then there was like a little bit at the start where they have this like raid that it happens in the tea room, and they're like, oh no, what should we do? And then there's like 50 pages towards the end of the book where they execute the heist, and we get plot twist after plot twist after plot twist that don't make any sense, because there are no, like, most of them have no hints at all. And the one that's like the big aha moment of the book, you already know within the first couple of chapters that it's going to happen if you like read carefully enough. So, enjoyable, yes. I do believe I still gave it 3 stars because it was just, the cast of characters was just fun to read about, but I didn't like this enough to continue the series, and I just felt it was a little bit like, it could have been edited better. I think that if this had been more polished and it had been thought through a little bit more, it would have, I think, worked a lot better. But this is one of those books that I would like to categorize as like a TikTok book, because I feel that books that are written in this way get a lot of hype on TikTok. It's why I still haven't read Fourth Wing, because I'm afraid it's going to do the same thing, where people judge the book by how it ends, and it like surprising you. But from a literary standpoint, a plot twist should never surprise you. It should surprise you, but you should be able to think about the story again and go like, wait, there were actually all these little nuggets throughout the book that gave this away. And here it's just like, ta-da! This is what's going on. And you're like, well, it just feels a little cheap to me. It's like an easy cop-out if you don't know how to round out the story, I feel. So for me, it kind of fits that bill of like something very easy to digest that a lot of people just enjoy for the sake of it being enjoyable. And that's why they give 5 stars. If that's one of the things why you feel frustrated, like I do with a lot of like online bookish content, then you hear my thoughts about this book, then you may be in the same street as I am. But yeah, this is just, it's enjoyable, but it's no more than that. I did already declutter that for that reason. Then I think this is actually the last book I finished before I sat down to film this video, and it's The Silent Companions by Laura Purcell. And this was actually really enjoyable. It's sort of like a historical fiction / ghost story / we don't really know what's going on kind of thing. So it has this gothic-y, unnerving sort of element to it. That's why I wanted to read it, because I did see this being mentioned by a lot of people on like their favorite gothic fiction reads. I don't feel it's fully gothic. It's mainly historical fiction with a dark twist. That's the way I feel about this book. What we're getting is we're getting a multiple POV story from, like, on the one hand, the main character of the story, which is set in 1865. She's newly widowed, and the man she married, she's pregnant with his baby, and she moves to his country estate, and in that country estate she finds silent companions. And the silent companions, what they are and how they ended up in the house, is being explained by a second point of view narrative, which is set 200 years in the past compared to the main story we're getting. So that's set in like the 1600s, where the lady of the house then purchases these silent companions, and then things take a turn for the worse, you could say. But this is a really, like, again, here the ending didn't surprise me, because we mainly get a first-person narrative. It's like all this, like, is this all real? Is she seeing things? Or is, like, it's one of those kind of books, like, continuously. Like, it's not, like, jump scare, like, ooh, whatever. So it's not, like, a scary read or anything like that. But there's just this unnerving quality where nothing really is the way it seems, and as a reader, we seem to know a little bit more than the main character because we get the background story of what happened 200 years ago and what might be going on, but she doesn't know that, right? She doesn't know this. The person reading this diary entry of like 200 years ago, because they find a diary together with the silent companions, is actually another character in the book that's mentioned, who we don't really get the point of view from, so we don't know what this main character knows. But it's one of those books where, you know, women weren't supposed to be believed. Is she hysterical? Is she lying? Has she just gone crazy? So that's pretty much what's going on in the book here. It was enjoyable. I do have to say that I didn't enjoy the diary entries all that much. It just felt like that part of the story could have been told in a different way, like more in a conversation style. You just get the dry text, you could say. And I don't know, there could have been, I wouldn't call it like more explaining. I didn't need more explanation per se. But the characters in that part of the story just didn't really fully come alive. Because as it turns out, I mean, this is a little bit of a spoiler, I would say. So if you don't want to hear anything about it, but apparently the lady who wrote the diary was burned as a witch, and that's why the entire town is still looking at this house like, ooh, bad things happened there. So nobody who lives on the land wants to work on the land, and they have to hire outside help, and it's a whole thing. There are a couple of things that made me question a little bit, but this was very enjoyable. It was very fast-paced, and I felt like overall the story was really well crafted. It has a couple of flaws, which is why it wasn't 5 stars for me, but I do believe I gave this 4 stars, if I'm not mistaken. I did, because I did read it quite recently. So yeah, this was enjoyable, another great one. Like I said, I'm just going to stick to things that I think I might enjoy, rather than go by what I feel I should read. And this is one that I had on my shelves for years, and I hadn't gotten around to it yet, and now I'm really happy I read it. I also read the second book in the Blackwater series. This is a 6-book novella series by Michael MacDonald that was written in the 80s. Part 2 is The Levy. What we're following here is a cast of characters, like this family dynasty that has always lived in this part of Southern Carolina, South Carolina. That's where they live. So like deep down south, and this book series is described as a really good example of Southern Gothic literature, which is why I wanted to read it. It's on my TBR for the rest of the year. I plan on reading 1 book every 2 months. So I think in June I'm due like the next one, because I think I did read, I read it a little bit more recently in May. But I think it's good to read the next one really, really soon. But we meet this family, and in the first book they discover a woman in a hotel room while the entire town has flooded, and the son ends up marrying this woman, and it's about them, their like mother, like the man's mother, their children, his brother, his sister, and like the cast of characters just keeps expanding. And at the same time, there is something going on with this lady that they found and that he married. In this book, it becomes a little bit more clear what's going on, because we see her darker side and her connection with the river a lot more than we do in the first book. So I really like how each book sort of amps up the stakes of the story, and it amps up the, like, not the mystery, because in the first book you don't really know what's going on with her. You know there's something going on, and that, like, people go missing at some point, and that she probably has something to do with it, but nobody suspects her yet. Nobody knows what's going on. Everybody just accepts that somebody probably fell in the river, and that was it. But in this book, we get to see some more of her work and what she does, so that's really exciting. And I really had to get used to the writing style of this, because it's very, like, when I first started reading it, it's like, ooh, I'm not sure whether I enjoy this writing style. But once I really got into it, and the same writing style is in this book as well, it's actually really, really readable. It's very descriptive, though, so you do have to like lengthy descriptions of, like, the Bajou and, like, the surroundings and, like, the White House on the hill and stuff like that. But this is really well crafted. I really enjoy how, even though it's a very short book, they're all just over 200 pages. So much is going on, not plot-wise, but character-wise. If you want a really good example of excellent character building, then these books so far have been some of the best ones I've read so far. The family dynamics, the sort of look into people's brains of how they like deal with things and interact with each other. It's almost like the relationships are much more important than the rest of the story, but you just know that it's like building towards something else, because I'm pretty sure in like one of the next books, people are going to notice that weird things are happening at some point. But it's very much set in like the 1920s, and it's written as if it is the 1920s in the deep south in South Carolina. So there is some language in here that if you're sensitive to that, you may not want to read it. It does have a disclaimer in the front as well that that's the way like people talked about things, and that's what the author used at the time. It was of course written also a couple of decades ago, before like certain language use wasn't frowned upon as much as it is nowadays. So you do need to take that into account if you ever want to get into this. But yeah, it's a very, very, so far, the second book was even better than the first one. So I hope that the next 4 books, it's only going to go up, 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 which I think it will. And then this was actually not on my TBR. I've actually been mainly reading the TBR I shared with you some point a couple of months ago, like, oh, for the springtime, this is what I want to read. I think I shared spring books with you, and then that became my spring TBR. And I've slowly been chipping away at it. But I was on vacation, and I read the next book I'll talk about. I read that completely. And I was like, you know what? I have so many of these dark, dreary things. I was in London. I needed a palate cleanser. And then I found this, buy one, get one half off at Waterstones. They also had Funny Story at Foyles. Like there was some Emily Henry there. And I enjoyed Beach Read. I read that 2 years ago, I think. And as far as like these romance kind of stories go, I quite enjoy Emily Henry, I now find. So I read People We Meet on Vacation, and I just thought this was such a fun book. It was exactly the palate cleanser that I needed at the moment, and this was just so enjoyable. So what I've actually done now is, because I have some other trips coming up in the next couple of months, I decided to buy some ebooks for my e-reader for those trips. And 4 of the books I bought are the remainder of the Emily Henry books I just haven't read yet, that come in these lovely covers. But I read Beach Read on my e-reader, and I think I'm going to continue them on my e-reader. I don't necessarily need these books on my shelf. They're very, like, forgettable, but they're fun, easy romps. In this story, we meet Poppy and Alex, who are people that are from the same town in Ohio, or like right across the street, slightly different name. They went to slightly different schools, but they grew up in each other's, like near each other really, and they meet when they join college, and they're like, oh, you're from the same, oh, okay. And they become best friends instantly, and at some point in time, they decide to go on a trip every single summer vacation together. They're best friends, but since this is a romance story, I think you can already guess, and it's no secret because it's shared with you right at the start of the book, that they want to be a little bit more than just friends. They're just really afraid to tell each other. And what we're getting in here is we're sort of getting like current day, like the trip they are currently on, being described in detail, and then we get flashbacks to all the different trips that are building up towards this moment. And I thought it was really well done. I thought Poppy and Alex were really good characters, the way they are described. Like, very often with romance novels, especially the women in romance novels just really irk me, like, the way they are written. There's sometimes, like, these, like, damsels going, like, oh, no, I don't know what's going on, and I fell in love. And then other things happened, and this just, like, every character in this, like, romance has agency, and they get to make decisions. They're not always the best decisions, but it feels very human and very, like, real how these kind of things actually work, and that's something that I really enjoy. I like the realism of this. Like, this is actually something that could happen in real life, you know? It's not this like, ooh, I stumbled, or like he held the door open for me and we locked eyes and that was it for the rest of our lives. I like the struggles these characters go to, the way it's described. It just made the story even more believable of how they actually end up together in the end. And I just like the banter that they had together. Poppy, as a main character, there were a couple of things I didn't fully enjoy, but for a romance story, this is one of the best things I've read in a while. in like the romance genre for sure. So that's why I want to read the next. I've heard that Funny Story is one of the best ones, so that's the one I'm really looking forward to. But I've just decided that this summer I'm just going to knock some of these Emily Henrys off my list whenever I need a palette cleanser. And I now have them on my e-reader, so there are no excuses. If everything is getting a little too dark and dreary, I can like have a little pick-me-up with some romance at some point. And the book I read before that is this big behemoth of a book. V.E. Schwab, I think still one of my favorite authors. This is Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, and this is a vampire story, so I really, really, really wanted to read it. I enjoyed this book a lot. I read it while I was in London. I started it on the train there, and then I finished it in like 3 days, I think. Because whenever I'm in London, what I tend to do is whenever I sit down at a coffee place, I grab my book and I read. So I tend to go through things quite like quickly that way. The book does get a little beaten up from that, and it was a big one. But it's like if I take one really big book and just have that in my bag to take with me for the trip, and then just buy other books while I'm there, I think I'm going to be good. So that was a good call to take a bigger book with me that I don't read too quickly. This was enjoyable. What I didn't like about this, the main reason why this isn't like a 5-star, is because it's multiple POV. And I didn't enjoy all the POVs. I felt the book got a little bit contrived and annoying towards the end of the story because of the different POVs. What I hadn't expected, what did end up happening in the book, is that the different POVs and the different threads do come together, which I did enjoy. I didn't really like the execution of how the threads came together, but there's definitely something going on here. So we actually meet 3 different characters. We meet, I think she's called Maria. Yeah, Maria, in like the 1500s. Yeah, in like, I think it's Spain, and she is turned into a vampire. And a lot of the story is told from her perspectives. And then we also meet one of her proteges, you could say, and then we meet and the protege, like, I don't think she really realized what she was getting into, if you know what I mean, when the proposal happened. So she's kind of living this life without really wanting it. And then someone in the modern day gets sort of dragged into that world in a very rude way. And it's just that the reason for how they end up being this little trio, that I felt like that thread of what's going on there was the one thing that was missing from the story. We just got them like living their lives, trying to figure out their lives from their perspective, and Maria, because she's the oldest vampire, you get to spend the most time with her. Like, a lot of the start of the book is mainly from her perspective, and then we get these flash forwards to a completely different character, but we have no clue yet how they are connected. And I felt like the story would have been more interesting if we didn't get the entire background of Maria, of how she became to be a vampire and all of her first endeavors and everything that she did. And that if the story had focused much more on the relation of these 3 characters, it would have meant like 200 pages less in the book, I would say. That would have made for a more interesting story. So it didn't have to be explained, but I just wanted to be more inside of that relationship of this vampire who like knows no bounds at some point. Like, apparently in the story, once a vampire becomes too old, or they don't take care enough of themselves too well, like if they become a little too much like, I'm a vampire, I can do anything, it's kind of like pushes them over the edge and they tend to go a little crazy. So that's what's happening to Maria at some point. But this whole like lore behind, why do vampires become that way? Why is it so dangerous for them to sort of push themselves over the edge every single time? That's not explained, because we do meet inside of Maria's story an even older vampire than her, who seems to like know how to manage that a lot more. And I felt like that part of the story would have given the author an in to sort of drop these hints a little bit more. But now it's just like, she went crazy, and then she started doing weird stuff, and that's why I could no longer be with her, and now we need to deal with that. And then the twist at the end of the other characters that's added into the mix, like, that went so fast, and there was little to no explanation as, like, not explanation, but I don't mean, like, I don't need to be explained to. This is another thing I don't like about a lot of the TikTok famous books, is that you get a lot of explanation and description, but I just wanted her motives for doing what she does to be coming from a part of the story, and not just like, boom, it happens. A bit like with Tempest of Tea. Like, it all of a sudden just drops out of the air that this happens, and you're, like, supposed to be shocked, which I was, but I'm like, is it just for shock value? That we get nothing here? Like, why? There's just nothing there. There are no grounds to the character for everything we know about her to act the way she does in the end. That could be the vampire tendencies, but again, like I said, the vampire tendencies are not explained. Like, that's the part that makes the book interesting and different from other vampire stories, and that's the thing we get nothing of. It's just mentioned. It's just like, oh yeah, you go crazy, and that's it. No, like, exploration of why this happens to vampires, what happens to them if it happens. Like, there's nothing there, and I just felt like that made the book a lot less interesting than it was, and it made it very slow to go through close to 600 pages of this. It's just over 500. This, again, could have been better edited. I think if the focus of the story would have been much more on that, I didn't need the entire origin story of how the entire relationship came to be. That was not my interest in this story. So the story goes in a completely different direction about, like, three quarters of the way through than the book you're getting at the first 3 quarters. So it's, again, one of those books where everything happens at the end, which I don't like. I like it if there's, like, little nuggets and explanations along the way, and that we then understand how the story comes together. Not because you're told directly, like, this is how it works, but because as a reader you can piece things together. I like it if my books are little puzzles. And then at the end you go like, those are the books I enjoy the most. Not gonna lie. And then we have my 5-star read. My first 5-star read in the longest time ever. As you know, I don't give up 5 stars. I know a lot of people say, like, well, if I have enjoyed it, I'm going to give it 5 stars. I'm a teacher. That's not how how things work. I can enjoy a student's work a lot, and then they can still fail the course. It's not about how much you enjoy something. It's also whether something is well crafted and whether there are, like, these little nuggets that I keep talking about. This book did that for me. This is the artist. This is by Lucy Steeds. And I picked it up randomly. I did not know about this book. I hadn't heard of it when I saw it at Waterstones when I was there in November in London. This was the debut fiction prize winner from Waterstones, so they had these huge stacks, and this was really lovely. Not only is the book itself beautiful, it has these beautiful end papers. The story ended up being a little differently from what I had expected just by reading the blurb, though. But there's so many layers to this story. It's about art, it's about feminism, it's about relationships, it's about family, it's about fear of being by yourself. There's so many layers, and this is not a big book. And yet, there is so much going on. And it's not surface level. It's all like, oh, wait, right there. Oh, wait, right there. So what we have in this story, and I'm going to say a little bit more than what you find in the blurb, but in the blurb it will say that a English journalist travels to the south of France to meet a reclusive, like, impressionist artist at, like, the start of the 20th century, to meet him even though he never gives out interviews. And so I thought going into it that this like, was this, like, who used to be a star and then they're being rediscovered kind of thing. And then it turns out that the identity of this artist was completely different from what everybody thought, and that this journalist finds out by going there. That's not what this story is, okay? This story is still about that journalist from England who goes to the south of France to meet this reclusive artist. It's just right from the start, it's very clear who this reclusive artist is, where his fame comes from. It's not really revealed why he's reclusive, because the person he interacts with most is the niece of the artist. And what this book is doing so well is questioning who decides what is art, what makes art art, and what makes an artist. And that is interspersed, like this exploration is explored as we are following how this English journalist gets to know this family a lot better, gets to know the niece a lot better, sits as a model for this reclusive artist and watches him work as he does his he does his painting and he is going through his process. And then there are some visitors who come by at a certain point, and how the artist is like exploring and like receiving their attention, and how they sit at the table and they eat together, and how all of that goes. So there's a lot going on in this book. There's a little bit of a mystery that's being solved at the same time. But another thing that I loved about it, and this is where it truly, truly came together for me, is that the way this book is written, it's set in the summer in the south of France with fresh lemons and figs, and there's fish around, and there's this beautiful sort of sunflower field, and there's this stream that they go skinny dipping, and there's all these like elements, and all those elements, like when you're reading this, you are at the cottage that it's set at, and you can smell the lemons almost. Like, I'm not one who loves like very descriptive fiction, but as I said, this is a short book, and somehow this author managed to do all that in, I don't know, just under 300 pages. And it was incredible. It was incredible. It's part art critique, part feminist story, part love story, part finding what you want to do in life. There's so much in this story, and I loved it. I really, really did. And I hadn't expected anything of it, because I hadn't really seen anybody talking about this. This isn't something that was really making the online rounds, and like I said, I just loved the way this book looked. That's what drew me in. I read the blurb. I thought it was just going to be this feminist story of, oh, the famous artist everybody thought was a man was a woman. That's not what this is. It goes a lot deeper than that. And I ended up to really, really loving it. It says here, a furiously romantic, sun-drenched mystery. Yeah, I wouldn't call it super romance heavy though. It's not a romance story as Emily Henry is, but there is a romantic interest between those two main characters that we follow. But there's mystery. There's a little bit of danger sometimes as well. It's just, it really came alive. And that's one of the things that I found this book did really, really well. And I've been really on a winning streak this spring, because this was a 4-star read for me. Stuart Turton's The Devil in the Dark Water. I wanted to read this because I really enjoyed the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle that I read by this author a couple of years ago. And I had bought this at the time when it was like his new book, and then I just never got around to it. So this is another one that like just sat on my shelf for years, and I wasn't sure what to do with it. And then I was looking for what to read, and I was like, this is something that I just wanted to read, and it was great. A bit of a Dutch connection here, because a lot of the characters in this story have Dutch names, because we are following a fleet of ships as they are leaving the Dutch East India colonies in like the 17th or 18th century, I don't remember, but when the Dutch were at their like heydays of like seafaring and like colonizing other countries. It's set in that sort of setting, and we follow this fleet, and on this ship, mass hysteria breaks out the minute they set sail. We follow, at the start of the book, this procession of the governor, and he is leaving on this fleet, and there's some really important cargo on this ship, and there is some sort of leper or someone who is like making this announcement, like, you're going to have a hell of a journey, and that's exactly what they're having. As it all turns out, it's not as mysterious as it's all made out to seem. That was a little bit of a letdown. But this is a great little, like, mystery story. It's almost like a locked room mystery because everything is happening on this ship. And because there are so many people on the ship, and we're getting to see, like, life below decks as well as life above deck, you could say. So you get all of the different classes who are on the ship, from the sailormen to the ladies who are like the daughter and the wife of the governor, who are like rich people and stuff. The governor himself, how he is like feeling and doing and what they are doing. There's a really good cast of characters in here. It is mixed POV, so I usually don't really enjoy that because I like being stuck in the head of like one character usually. But with this, I felt it really worked because we get some like different insights to different parts of what's going on. What I didn't enjoy all that much, because that's sort of like, there's this Sherlock Holmes type of character that is involved, and he is described as this like great mind. He can solve any mystery, and nobody knows exactly why, and we don't find out until pretty late in the book. But he's been arrested by the governor, and he is part of this procession and then put on the ship, locked up, and we don't know much about him. And one of the characters we do get a lot of story time from is his main, like, right-hand man, you could say. That is one of the characters we do get to know a lot about, and he's all the time like, yeah, but I can do what you do because you're the brilliant one, and that's not something that I do. So he's sort of, like, stuck in a rut, like, no, don't, please don't make me, I can't do this by myself. And that part of the story, and then, like, how this character ends up being involved, like, this really brilliant, very brave, smart, Sherlock Holmesian kind of character, how he ties into the plot, that was the bit where I was like, now we're pushing it. Now we're pushing it a little too far. Because this book also suffered from plot twist overkill at the end. I was like, just solve the mystery, and I'm happy. But it was like, we solve the mystery, and then we solve another mystery, and then there's, oh wait, there's also this, oh no, there's also this. It went a little bit too far, in my opinion. But overall, I really enjoyed it. This book also ended on a, there could be more from these guys, and I did really enjoy the cast of characters, so that was there, definitely, and I like the mystery in itself. I like a bit of a mystery puzzle solving kind of thing, and as with some of the other books where it's like, I would have wanted more like pieces of the puzzle so I can piece it together myself. This is that. This is a puzzle in book form, and I loved it. So 4 stars though, because of the ending. I was like, I can't give it 5 stars for that, but it was a very well crafted story that I really enjoyed. I was flying through this once I really got going. It took me a while because it's quite an intimidating, like, bigger book. I think it's like, yeah, it's like, this is 550 pages. So it is a bigger story, but once you get going, you can't put this down. It take, especially because we sort of get this whole, like, chronological order of, like, we walk to the ship, then we get onto the ship, then we're on board the ship, now we're leaving with the ship, now we're part of the ship, oh no, there's a storm, so we are now the only ship that's left, you know what I mean? That whole thing, like, that part, like, until the journey properly got started, and we truly get, like, sucked into the mystery, that was the part that was a little bit slow for me. But it's one of those books that's really rewarding if you soldier on. And then I think this is actually one of the books that I did already show you that I've read when I did my little journal update for you guys. I still need to do one of those as well, but I need to wait until I've read a certain amount of books so I can like do my little printouts. So I'm going to wait until that. Or maybe I'm just going to keep reading and then just update you on like, I don't know, the next 12 books that I've read probably. But this one, this was already in my book journal, but I haven't really given it proper attention in a video. The Impossible Fortune by Richard Osman. I think this is actually the oldest book that I hadn't told you about in my previous wrap-up, because I saw I did one for January, February, but I didn't do one for March or April yet. So I think I kind of started this in February and then like finished it early March. I think that must have been happening. But this is the fifth or sixth? Fifth. I think it's the fifth book in the Thursday Murder Club series by Richard Osman. This is about a group of pensioners who live in this retirement village, and they get together and solve murders. And they also do that here. It is all very improbable and just really enjoyable. If you like British humor, you like this. I do recommend starting with the first book, because as we get to know this cast of characters more and more and more, they just sort of become part of your life. That's the kind of way I feel about this book. That's why I enjoy it. It's very plot driven, but it's also very relationship driven because of the different characters we get, and you sort of bond with them over time. We have a character in here who's grieving, so you need to understand where that's coming from. We have a mom-daughter combination that is getting a lot more attention already in this book than it did in any of the other books, and it's suddenly becoming a lot more important. So yeah, I am excited for the next one, but I don't think this is going to be an easy read for you if you haven't read the other 4 books. And I'm not sure if it's worth it to read everything from this. They are very fast-paced, though. I fly through these books. They are just incredibly fun, but I don't think any of them have been more than 3-star reads for me. I enjoy them, but they are very flat stories. It's a fun romp. It's easy to read. It's very digestible. There's lots of banter and like little funny jokes and pop culture references that I think if you're in the UK, you are going to understand those best. I think if you don't have a lot of knowledge of UK pop culture, and like who certain TV presenters are or what's on BBC and stuff, if you're not familiar with that sort of thing, then this could be a bit of a tougher read for you. But yeah, I enjoy these. I enjoy the banter. I enjoy the humor. The plots are a little bit, like I said, improbable, and it's just a good time. It's a good time in book form. That's all I can say about it. And finally, this little guy by Claire Keegan, Small Things Like These. I still want to watch the movie with Cillian Murphy, and that's on Netflix. I believe maybe it's already taken down. I don't know, but I knew I had the book. I was like, before I watch the movie, I need to read the book, and it's a small one. This is like more of a novella type of thing. It's like just over 100 pages, so that's lovely. And this is set in Ireland. I believe Claire Keegan is an Irish author, and she writes a lot of the shorter books actually by her. And she writes about these like very Irish themes, and that's what I just wanted to give a whirl. This is one of those books that I just saw everywhere, like on every table. Whenever I went book shopping in London, this was just everywhere. I was like, okay, I may have to read this. So that's what we're doing. We're reading, we've read Claire Keegan's Small Things Like These, and this was excellent as well. For how short it is, I felt it did a lot. It's about a father who, I think in the 1980s, has a business driving trucks, and he's delivering, was it the 1980s? Maybe earlier, because he's delivering coal. I don't know much about the economic situation in Ireland in like the 1970s and 80s, but he drives around to deliver people like coal and like things to warm their house with, really. And he's just a delivery guy, and he's like driving around. His family can still get by, but a lot of other families in the town are struggling. And one of the places that he delivers to is a convent a little just out of town. And this convent has a like not foster home. Is that what you would call it in English? I think like an orphanage type of thing for girls. And if you know anything about Irish history, there are other stories that have been told about this. But in Ireland, and I think many other places, the Catholic Church has not really done a lot of great things in these convents. A lot of girls were abused and things went terrible for them. So we never really get to see the abuse because the father, he's our only character who sees this, but he finds a girl in the coal shed hiding, essentially, in the middle of winter. It's snowing. It's right before Christmas. He, like, everybody in town sort of at the same time doesn't really, like, everybody knows something's going on at the convent, but nobody really knows what, and nobody's trying to dig too deep, because the convent also is a very important economic factor for a lot of businesses. Like, they buy the baker's bread, and they buy the coal from the coal man, and all that stuff. So because everybody's already going through tough times, nobody is really asking any questions. And from his encounter with the girl, the father starts to ask questions. And that's all I'm going to say about this book. It's short. If you want to read it's very bleak. It's not an enjoyable book in the sense of this is going to be like a great time. But if you want to get a sense of like a place that maybe you've never been to, and you want to learn more from like just a regular's point of view, like a regular person's point of view, how this impacts everybody around them and not just the people involved directly, then I think that this is a very interesting read to just give it a whirl and to see where it goes. I think I gave this 4 stars because, again, for such a short book, there's a lot going on. We get his family dynamics with his family at home. We get his conscience that starts to play a toll on him. People in the village who tell him, no, you shouldn't interfere. You know, there's just a lot going on, but at the same time, he's just also just driving around his truck and delivering coal to people. But because he does that, he gets to see a lot of places from a different point of view, and he knows exactly who is struggling and who isn't, because some of his customers haven't paid in weeks for his deliveries, and he keeps delivering to them because he's like, there's going to be a time when these people can pay again, and I don't want to be the bad guy because it's winter and people need to stay warm. So he's definitely a man with a conscience, and now I just really want to watch that movie. So those are all the books I read. I know, there were a lot, because I just hadn't talked about them yet with you guys. Still on the TBR, Robin Hobb, Assassin's Apprentice. I'm still excited for this. This is going to be like my next fantasy read, and I'm already halfway through Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. So that's about halfway done. So when that's done, I'm going to soldier on with this one. And that's nice because summer is approaching. It's going to be June very soon. As you're watching this video, we have already started the month of June. And I'm pretty confident that I can read this before solstice and like the 21st of June when summer officially starts. And I can make myself a little summer TBR. And you can expect a lot of Emily Henry on there. And a couple of other things as well that I'm going to throw into the mix. And that's going to be like a nice curation of what I want to read the next couple of months. And this, I don't normally pick TBRs very often when I've done like seasonal TBR videos. It's kind of like recommendations for you guys that I think you might enjoy as well to read during that period of the year. But this time I actually made a TBR and stuck to it, and it's actually working for me. So far, Intermezzo by Sally Rooney, I don't know yet what to think. I've just gotten to part 2. So if I open the book, that's pretty much where I'm at. Part 2. First chapter of part 2. The chapters are a little bit long. I don't love the stream of conscious type of writing we're getting in here, but I'm sure there's a point to it. I'm still like waiting to see. But this is about 2 brothers. Their dad has just passed away. The one brother is a chess champion, and he's struggling with the loss of his dad while meeting a woman, and it's sort of like his great first love, you could say. And then there is his older brother that I think they're roughly 10, maybe 15 years apart, and he's a lawyer, he has money, whatever, and he's dealing with the loss of his dad in a very different way, and he has an ex that he can't really get over, and like having a relationship with another lady at the side. So it's mainly about these 2 brothers, how they struggle with grief, how they're both trying to find their way in coping with the grief of losing their father, and how they do that in very different ways, and then the women in their lives. That's how I feel for now what we're getting from this story. And I'm pretty sure that the chess element of it has something to do with it at some point. At least I hope so. But yeah, I'm in part 2. So, don't know what part 2 will bring. If it's anything like Normal People, then part 2 could throw me for a complete loop, because that's what Normal People did. There's a section in the middle of Normal People that makes it a very dark and very depressing book all of a sudden. So I hope this book isn't going to do it. But if it's anything like other Sally Rooney books, because I've read all of her books so far, then I'm pretty sure this is going to take a slight unexpected turn. But we'll see where it goes. So far I'm enjoying it. It's been lovely weather, and one of my favorite things to do when it's nice weather is to sit out on my balcony at the end of the day and read. So I actually, we've been having really, really warm weather. That's why I'm not wearing tons of makeup today, because today is going to be another hot day. But I like to sit out, have my sun umbrellas up, have dinner at night, and then if it's not too hot anymore, once the sun is starting to disappear behind the houses, my balcony has just the right temperature to just chill. And I got some new balcony furniture this spring, and it's been lovely. It's like the best reading spot now in my entire house, now that we are having nice weather. So been reading a lot outside in this one, and I'm really enjoying it. And like I said, next up, some classic fantasy that I'm very curious after, because a lot of people love it, but a lot of people say that the next series is a lot better than the first one. But I wanted to start just with the first one. I only have the first book in the series as well, so if I love it, I'm toast, because that means I'm gonna have to buy a lot of books. I think it's 16 books in the entire series. But yeah, these are well-loved fantasy books, and I'm very curious how they will fare. So that's it for me for right now. Thanks so much for watching me, and then I hope to see you again really, really soon in a new video. Check back for more next week. I think we need to do a fashion haul. I haven't done a fashion video in weeks, so we're gonna have to do something fashion related next, don't you think? Let's do that, and then I hope to see you again really, really soon in a new video. Bye-bye.